The broadcast echoed across the galaxy. No one can conquer the trial of Zorath. Are you brave enough to try? Dr. Zorath Kfor stood tall in his lecture hall on the Krentar Collective's homeworld, his 6 translucent limbs gesturing dramatically as he addressed an audience of scholars, spectators, and challengers. His voice, amplified by the room's resonance field, carried a confidence born from decades of unchallenged genius. For centuries, he declared, the Krentar have been the architects of intellectual and physical perfection. This course, my course, is the ultimate measure of worth. It is a crucible where even the strongest fail. It is not just a challenge, it is a reckoning. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Even the galaxy's mightiest warriors and brightest minds hesitated at the prospect of attempting the trial. Footage of past attempts played on holographic displays, a multi-limbed Gorvian struggling against a tidal wave of acid rain, a brilliant Lixorian mathematician collapsing mid-puzzle, a Terran pilot screaming as gravity itself turned against him. The message was clear: this was no ordinary obstacle course. It was a meticulously engineered nightmare. From the back of the hall, a calm voice cut through the tension. I'll give it a shot. Heads turned toward the speaker, a human clad in unremarkable gear. Alex Carter's casual tone and easy posture contrasted sharply with the charged atmosphere. He wasn't tall or imposing like some of the alien challengers, nor did he carry the air of a scientific prodigy. To the untrained eye, he looked utterly ordinary. Dr. Zorath's sharp, luminescent eyes narrowed. A human? His voice dripped with disdain. Your kind barely survived first contact with the galactic community. What makes you think you can survive my trial? Alex shrugged. You said it's impossible. I like impossible. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The idea of a human succeeding where dozens of elite competitors had failed was absurd. Yet something in Alex's expression, calm, confident, and unshaken, gave a few observers pause. Dr. Zorath sneered, his pride stung. Very well, human. Let it be known that when you fail, it will only further solidify the Krentar's dominance. With a flourish of his limbs, he gestured toward a massive doorway that shimmered with an unearthly glow. The trial begins now. The crowd followed Alex as he approached the entrance. The moment he crossed the threshold, the shimmering doorway sealed behind him with a hiss, plunging the chamber into tense silence. Inside, the first challenge unfurled, a labyrinth of shifting walls, electrified floors, and mechanical sentries armed with plasma darts. The walls pulsed with alien symbols, part riddle, part warning. Let's see how far your human arrogance takes you, Zorath muttered, monitoring the live feed from his control station. But as the labyrinth's traps activated, Alex didn't panic. His movements were deliberate, his eyes scanning for patterns. He sidestepped plasma bursts with uncanny precision and used the shifting walls to his advantage, ducking through gaps just as they closed. A faint smile tugged at his lips. The audience, watching through holographic displays, murmured in disbelief. Is he laughing? Someone whispered. Dr. Zorath leaned forward, his confidence shaken for the first time. The impossible had just met its first challenger. Alex Carter stood at the edge of the second challenge, a chamber that pulsed with a cold, artificial glow. Hundreds of crystalline structures floated in midair, each emitting beams of light that crisscrossed the room in a tangled web. At first glance, it looked beautiful, almost serene. But the whispers from the crowd told a different story. This is the lattice of paradox, an alien commentator explained over the broadcast feed. Each crystal contains a puzzle, each more complex than the last. A single incorrect move will destabilize the lattice, turning the room into an inescapable vortex. Dr. Zorath observed from his control station, his expression a mixture of amusement and anticipation. This was where so many challengers faltered, their minds crumbling under the weight of unsolvable problems. A human doesn't stand a chance, he thought smugly. Alex, however, appeared unfazed. He scanned the room, his gaze sharp and calculating. He wasn't just looking at the puzzles, he was studying the system itself. Patterns began to emerge, subtle inconsistencies that hinted at a deeper logic beneath the chaos. All right, he muttered to himself, stepping forward. Let's play. The first crystal lit up as Alex touched its surface, projecting a swirling hologram of alien runes and equations. The crowd held its breath. For most challengers, deciphering the glyphs required hours of analysis, but Alex's fingers moved with surprising confidence, rearranging symbols and reconfiguring sequences. Within minutes, the hologram dissolved with a chime, and the crystal dimmed. A new path through the lattice opened before him. Dr. Zorath frowned, his limbs twitching irritably. "Begin the secondary protocols," he ordered. The lattice responded immediately. Crystals shifted positions, their beams of light creating new layers of complexity. The puzzles now adapted in real time, responding to Alex's moves with increased difficulty. It was a dynamic system designed to overwhelm even the most advanced intellects. Alex chuckled under his breath. "Now we're talking." The next crystal presented a logic paradox so intricate it had driven previous contestants to madness. Alex approached it with calm determination, mentally dissecting the problem. He wasn't solving it in the traditional sense, he was finding ways to break it apart, looking for flaws in its design. To him, the lattice wasn't an obstacle, it was a system begging to be outsmarted. As he continued, whispers spread through the alien spectators. "How is he doing this?" a Krentar scholar murmured. "Humans aren't supposed to be capable of this level of cognitive adaptation." By the halfway point, Alex's progress was undeniable. His movements grew faster, more confident, as if he had tapped into the lattice's underlying code. The crowd, once mocking and dismissive, now watched in stunned silence. Dr. Zorath's composure cracked. "He's exploiting errors in the system," he muttered, his claws clenching the control panel. "Impossible. The lattice is flawless." But it wasn't flawless. Alex had seen it from the start. The course was built on arrogance, its creator assuming no one would think outside the constraints of the puzzles themselves. And that was where Alex thrived. He didn't just solve problems, he redefined them. The final crystal loomed ahead, pulsating with a blinding intensity. Alex approached it without hesitation, his hands a blur as he dismantled its complexity with surgical precision. The lattice let out a low, harmonic tone, and then the entire room fell silent. The door to the next challenge slid open. Alex turned to the nearest camera, his face calm but his eyes gleaming with amusement. "Is that the best you've got?" he said. In the control room, Dr. Zorath stared at the monitor, his pride now mingled with disbelief. For the first time, he felt a pang of uncertainty. This human wasn't just surviving the trial, he was dismantling its very foundation. The third chamber exuded an oppressive atmosphere, its walls alive with shifting, organic patterns. Dim lights flickered sporadically, casting jagged shadows across the room. A low, thrumming vibration filled the air, not loud enough to drown out thoughts, but persistent enough to unsettle the mind. Alex Carter stepped forward, his footsteps echoing against the hollow, metallic floor. This was the gauntlet of fear, a psychological assault so potent it had broken even the most resolute of beings. Its technology, derived from Krentar bioneural simulations, was designed to weaponize a competitor's deepest fears, dredging them from the subconscious and magnifying them to unbearable levels. From his control station, Dr. Zorath watched with predatory anticipation. "The human's resilience ends here," he muttered, activating the chamber's neural array. "Let us see how adaptable he truly is when faced with his own terror." The first wave hit Alex like a physical blow. The chamber's walls shifted, and the air grew heavy with the acrid scent of smoke. Flames flickered to life, spreading unnaturally fast, their heat licking at Alex's skin. He blinked, and suddenly he was standing on the cracked remains of a battlefield, a memory he'd worked hard to bury. Earth. The second lunar conflict. The air had been filled with ash and fire, and Alex had been just a rookie pilot, tasked with evaluating survivors under relentless enemy bombardment. He could still hear the cries, the chaos, the crushing weight of responsibility. The simulation wasn't just showing him these moments, it was forcing him to relive them. For a moment, his breath hitched, his pulse racing as the illusion tightened its grip. But Alex wasn't like the others who had faced this gauntlet. He didn't fight the fear, he let it wash over him. He'd learned long ago that resistance only gave fear more power. Instead, he closed his eyes, grounding himself in the present. "This isn't real," he whispered. "You can't hurt me." The battlefield flickered, the illusion momentarily destabilized. Dr. Zorath frowned, increasing the intensity of the neural assault. The chamber responded by morphing into a new nightmare, a void of infinite darkness, punctuated by whispers. The voices were familiar, accusing, taunting, reminding Alex of every mistake he'd ever made. "You abandoned them," a voice hissed. "You could have saved more." Alex smirked bitterly. "Oh, you're good," he muttered. "But I've heard worse, from myself." His calmness had an unexpected effect on the chamber. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if the system couldn't comprehend his refusal to break. The darkness swirled, and the walls began to close in. But instead of panicking, Alex moved deliberately, analyzing the room's shifting patterns. "Fear's just another system," he said under his breath, his voice steady. "And every system has a flaw." He began to navigate the chamber, using its illusions against it. When the walls tried to hem him in, he waited for their rhythm to falter, slipping through gaps just before they closed. The neural array, designed to overwhelm its targets, found itself struggling to adapt to Alex's defiance. From the control room, Dr. Zorath leaned forward, his irritation mounting. "Impossible," he hissed. "No one resists the gauntlet. No one." But Alex wasn't just resisting, he was dismantling it. As he reached the chamber's final threshold, the illusions collapsed entirely, leaving only the cold, empty walls of the simulation. The door ahead unlocked with a soft hiss. Alex paused, glancing at the nearest camera. "Thanks for the therapy session," he said dryly before stepping through. Dr. Zorath clenched his claws, a knot of unease forming in his chest. The gauntlet of fear was meant to break minds, but Alex had turned it into a game. The human wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And for the first time, Zorath began to wonder if his masterpiece truly was unbeatable. The fourth chamber was a cavernous expanse of shimmering metal and shifting lights. Floating platforms rotated in unpredictable orbits, suspended in a void of zero gravity. The air shimmered with energy fields, and the only sounds were the faint hum of generators and the occasional crackle of static discharges. Alex Carter stepped onto the threshold, taking in the scene with a mix of curiosity and caution. "This is Gravity's Edge," the Krentar commentator explained to the audience. "A trial of pure physicality and spatial reasoning. Competitors must traverse the void using nothing but their wits and agility, all while avoiding destabilization traps and gravity surges." Alex studied the layout, his mind racing as he calculated distances, trajectories, and potential hazards. The platforms weren't stationary, they moved in erratic patterns, occasionally phasing in and out of existence. Between them, glowing orbs of energy flickered ominously, ready to release bursts of gravitational force capable of crushing or flinging anything nearby. From the control station, Dr. Zorath monitored Alex with growing impatience. "This phase is beyond his primitive physiology," he muttered. "Let us see how the human fares against true multidimensional complexity." With a deep breath, Alex launched himself into the void. His movements were precise, each jump timed to intercept a rotating platform. He gripped its edge and used its momentum to sling himself toward the next one, his body twisting gracefully through the air. It wasn't brute strength or advanced technology guiding him, it was sheer instinct and experience, honed by years of piloting spacecraft in hostile environments. The first section passed with surprising ease, and the audience murmured in astonishment. "He moves like he's done this before," one observer remarked. Others watched in stunned silence as Alex adjusted his trajectory mid-flight, narrowly avoiding a platform that blinked out of existence just before he landed. But Zorath wasn't about to let Alex's progress continue uncontested. "Activate the destabilizers," he ordered. The void responded immediately. Energy orbs began releasing pulses of gravitational force, causing platforms to lurch violently or spiral into erratic motions. One pulse struck near Alex, yanking him off his intended path and sending him tumbling through the void. For a moment, he spun helplessly, the world a blur of light and motion. But instead of panicking, Alex adjusted. He extended his arms, using his body's rotation to align himself with the next platform. With a well-timed push from his legs, he redirected his momentum, landing in a controlled roll. The audience erupted into cheers and gasps. Even those who had mocked the human at the start couldn't help but admire his adaptability. Zorath, however, was livid. "Increase the difficulty. He cannot be allowed to make a mockery of this." The platforms grew smaller, their movements faster and more unpredictable. Gravity surges became more frequent, turning the void into a chaotic storm. Alex gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his brow as he pushed himself to the limit. Every leap, every grab, was a test of timing and precision. Finally, the chamber's exit came into view, a narrow portal framed by shimmering light. A massive gravity surge erupted behind Alex, threatening to pull him into its core. With a final burst of effort, he propelled himself forward, reaching the portal just as the surge collapsed. He landed inside the next chamber, breathing hard but victorious. Behind him, the void returned to stillness, the trial beaten. Dr. Zorath stared at the display, his claws twitching with frustration. "How?" he muttered. "How does he keep surviving?" Alex smirked at the nearest camera, his voice calm despite his exertion. "That was fun. What's next?" The question wasn't just a challenge, it was a statement. He wasn't just surviving the trial. He was thriving, and the galaxy was watching. The fifth chamber opened into a sprawling alien battlefield, a shimmering holographic simulation that spanned miles. Towering structures floated in the distance, surrounded by fields of shifting terrain that defied natural physics. The air crackled with energy, and a constant hum hinted at the vast artificial intelligence lurking behind the scenes. Alex Carter stood at the starting platform, surveying the chaotic expanse. Above him, drones zipped back and forth, projecting holographic feeds of the battlefield to the audience. Every competitor who had reached this stage before had failed, not just because of the obstacles, but because of the opponent waiting for them. "The hive mind," the announcer intoned, reverence laced into their voice. A collective AI designed to adapt in real time, learning from its challengers' every move. "It is undefeated." Dr. Zorath leaned closer to his monitor, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "This is the apex of my trial," he murmured to no one in particular. "No amount of human cleverness will defeat the hive mind. It is pure intellect. Pure precision." Alex stepped forward, unarmed except for his wits and a small tactical console strapped to his forearm. His path was blocked by shimmering walls of energy, turrets that tracked his every move, and drones armed with plasma weapons. He wasn't just facing a battlefield, he was facing an enemy that knew how to anticipate and counter any strategy. The hive mind's first move came swiftly. A swarm of drones descended from the sky, firing coordinated plasma bursts that left no room for error. Alex ducked, rolled, and darted for cover, his movements erratic and unpredictable. But it wasn't enough to simply evade. He needed to take control of the situation. Ducking behind a crumbling pillar, Alex activated his console. The battlefield was filled with signals, communications between the hive mind and its drones, tactical overlays, and environmental controls. It was a digital jungle, and Alex grinned as he realized what he was up against. "All right, let's see how smart you really are," he muttered, fingers flying over the console. Instead of playing defensively, Alex launched a counterattack, not against the drones, but against the hive mind's network. His years as a pilot had given him more than just physical training. He was also a gifted hacker, and he understood how to exploit weak points in complex systems. The hive mind reacted instantly, rerouting its defenses to block his intrusion. But in doing so, it left its drones less coordinated. Alex seized the opportunity, leaping out of cover and sprinting toward the next objective. Turrets fired, but their timing was off, their precision faltering as the hive mind struggled to balance its resources. From the control room, Dr. Zorath's claws dug into the console. "Impossible," he hissed. "No one has ever disrupted the hive mind's network." Alex reached the central node, a towering spire glowing with raw energy. It was the heart of the hive mind, and the final piece of the trial. Drones swarmed to protect it, but Alex had already anticipated their response. He hacked into a nearby turret, turning it against its own allies. Plasma fire tore through the drones, clearing a path. The hive mind, now fully aware of the threat Alex posed, shifted tactics. The battlefield itself began to collapse, terrain fracturing and energy barriers appearing at random. The AI wasn't trying to outsmart Alex anymore, it was trying to overwhelm him. But Alex had one last trick. Using the hive mind's own communication protocols, he injected a line of corrupted code directly into the node. The AI faltered, its drones freezing mid-air as the battlefield systems glitched. Alex sprinted to the node and slammed his hand against its control panel, inputting the shutdown sequence he'd deciphered earlier. The hive mind let out a deafening, synthetic wail before the battlefield went dark. The door to the final chamber opened, and Alex stepped through without looking back. The crowd erupted into chaos, a mix of cheers and disbelief. Dr. Zorath stared at the blank monitors, his expression frozen in shock. For the first time in his life, his creation had been defeated. Alex glanced at the nearest camera, a cocky grin on his face. "Not bad," he said, brushing dust from his jacket. "But I expected more." The trial was nearly over, but Alex had proven one thing beyond doubt: humanity wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. The final chamber was a masterpiece of Krentar engineering, a kaleidoscopic arena of shifting light and energy that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls pulsed with a rhythm that matched Alex Carter's heartbeat, and the air felt thick, charged with the promise of a climactic end. This was the trial's core, the culmination of Dr. Zorath's grand design. Standing in the center of the chamber was the architect himself. Dr. Zorath's translucent limbs shimmered with agitation, his usually calm demeanor replaced with a barely restrained fury. The human had bested every phase of the trial, dismantling Zorath's carefully constructed challenges with ingenuity and audacity. But here, in the heart of the system, the professor had control. "Impressive, human," Zorath said, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "You've come further than anyone else. But make no mistake, this is the end. The core will not yield to brute force or clever tricks." Alex stepped forward, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, scanning the chamber for clues. The core's central console floated at the room's apex, surrounded by a spiraling vortex of raw energy. To reach it, Alex would have to navigate an ever-changing maze of energy fields, shifting platforms, and deadly traps. Above it all, Zorath loomed, his presence a constant reminder of the stakes. "Let's see what you've got," Alex said, his voice cutting through the tension. Zorath's claws danced across a control panel, and the chamber responded. Energy beams crisscrossed the room, forcing Alex to leap to the nearest platform as the floor dissolved beneath him. The maze shifted constantly, platforms vanishing and reappearing in unpredictable patterns. Every step was a gamble, every leap a test of timing and instinct. But Alex didn't hesitate. His movements were fluid, each decision made in the blink of an eye. He used the maze's shifting nature to his advantage, anticipating patterns and exploiting gaps in its defenses. Zorath watched, his frustration mounting as the human adapted faster than the system could recalibrate. "Enough of this," Zorath growled, activating the core's final defense. A massive drone descended from the ceiling, its sleek, angular frame bristling with weaponry. It unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, forcing Alex to dive for cover. The audience, watching from across the galaxy, gasped as Alex narrowly avoided a direct hit. But instead of retreating, he used the drone's attack to propel himself upward, riding the shockwave to a higher platform. "You're only delaying the inevitable," Zorath said, his voice strained. "The core is flawless. You cannot win." Alex smirked, his hand brushing against the console strapped to his forearm. "You keep saying that, but I've noticed something. Every perfect system has one thing in common: overconfidence." As the drone repositioned, Alex hacked into its targeting system, forcing it to fire at the core's energy field. The feedback destabilized the vortex, creating a brief opening. Without hesitation, Alex launched himself upward, using the drone's ruined frame as a springboard. He reached the central console and slammed his hand onto the controls. "No!" Zorath roared, his limbs flailing as the core systems began to shut down. The arena flickered, its energy dissipating in cascading waves. The once imposing structure dimmed, leaving only Alex standing triumphantly at its center. The chamber doors opened, and the audience erupted into cheers. For the first time in its history, the trial had been conquered. Zorath stared at Alex, his pride shattered. You've rewritten the rules," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex turned to face him, a calm smile on his face. "No," he replied. "I just played the game better." With that, Alex walked away, leaving the defeated professor and the galaxy to ponder the lesson humanity had delivered: ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability could overcome even the greatest challenges. The trial of Zorath had met its match, and humanity had prevailed.